Hello again. Thanks a lot for joining in for this session where we are going to talk about the latest released version 0.20/32. In this particular version, we had an important delivery related to new capability requested by our user, which was nothing but allowing data to be exported from OpenRose. So here is the release notes. That's the current version, the latest version 0.20/32, and it's all about mainly the export of data in JSON format that includes requirements breakdown structure. Now we support exporting of project, requirements item types data, requirements items data, baseline requirements item type data, and baseline item data. All these are now supported in the latest version. So let me start by showing you in our project area the user story that we received, and it was a very simple user story where, as a user of OpenRose tool or application, I want to be able to export project, requirement item type or requirement items to a file system so that I can share it with others and import it in another OpenRose repository. The end part, which is the import part, will follow up later on. Today we have completed the export part for 6 different types of data. When we received this enhancement request, our team sat down and started jotting down the different requirements in terms of the scope of this work, as well as what is the impact, how we will architect, how we will deliver this particular solution, and also all about what should be included, what should be the structure of the JSON file, how the traceability should be included, how the filtering criteria should work. So all those things were documented in wiki, that is nothing but concept of exporting data from OpenRose. And you can find all this information available for your understanding of how we have implemented this feature at our wiki site. What we also did is, before we started working on the actual code, we explained our understanding of the same. We captured a nice video and then we shared it with the community so that people understand what we are working on and what are our decision and thoughts around this particular enhancement request. You can look at the video on YouTube or also via the blog page where we have described these enhancement requests and different discussions around the same. So let's jump into the real enhancement that is supported as part of these specific release. So if you upgrade to version 0.20/32, then obviously in the settings you will see that you are on that particular version, and then you will see a new option called as export that is available in the menu on the left hand side. Now going to the project, let me again use the charity fundraising project. So if I open it up in a tree view and expand it all, then you can see the information about the 3 different item types that we have for charity fundraising. And then you can also see the requirements breakdown structure in the 3rd item type, which is post fundraising activity. So today we're gonna start by doing an export of the entire project. So we have several requirements or items sitting immediately below the 1st item type. Similarly, you have the flat requirements list sitting under the 2nd item type, and then you have some flat requirements as well as hierarchical requirements. And some of these requirements, like this publish and promote, also has traceability going to other requirements that are in scope within this particular project. So the engaged participants and volunteers, if I open this up, it's actually sitting here under fundraising event execution. And From here, I can again go back to publish and promote. And there you have one more, which is engage participants and volunteers. It's nothing but a copy that was created, which is available here under fundraising event execution as well. This is just a copy that we created, and we particularly created traceability to that particular requirement. That's the current data structure that we have. And what we want to do is export this project out into JSON format. So let's go and pick up the project ID from here. We always have to pass in an ID for the data that we are exporting. And because I'm passing an ID for the project, it's gonna export all its item types and all its requirements breakdown structure, including any child or sub requirements that are available, and any traceability which is within the scope of these exported requirements will also be included in our export. So let's just open the export tab here and then go to the project. Because I'm exporting project, I'm selecting project, and then let me pass in the ID of my project. When I click on submit, it shows me some high level details about the project, which is nothing but charity fundraising project that I want to export. And when I click on export selected project, off we go. The export is successful, and now I can go ahead and look at the downloads, and here it is. This is the file that is generated. You can see the name of the file is OpenRose export of a project at a given date and time. Now here you can see that I have the repository ID. This is the unique ID of my entire repository, which contains several projects. And then within the projects, I'm actually exporting a single project, which is nothing but charity fundraising. We start by exporting a first item type, which is nothing but pre-fundraising preparation item type. It has its description and details about the created date and time, as well as the status information for that item type. And then we have individual item. As we know it, we have a flat structure. So we basically have the flat list of items, which are nothing but array of requirements sitting under our item type. So if I close this first item type, which is fundraising, pre-fundraising preparation. So let me just close this. Then you can see the next item type, which is fundraising event execution and all its requirements or items below it. And if I close that one, then we have the third one, which is post-fundraising activities. And here you will see certain sub-items. So far, sub-items are null, but at some point you will start seeing sub-items below the main item here, which indicates the requirements breakdown structure. So we plan video content has identify key moments to capture as a sub-item. Now I can close this particular sub-item, and then we can see produce and edit the video reels. Also has some sub-items below it. If I close this item, then we can see the next one, which is publish and promote, which also contains a few sub-items below it. Let me close that as well. So finally, we also have this parking lot item type. Obviously, it doesn't have any items. It's blank. So we are not seeing any data there. Let's go back on the top and let me actually close the project itself. So if I don't show any project data, and if I don't show any traceability data, then you can see the flat structure here. This is the base structure of how the data is exported. You will always see repository ID. You only see the project data in an array form only when you export a particular project. And when you export the particular project, you don't see any data for item type, for items, for baseline item type, baseline item, and baseline traceability. So wherever you see this null, it indicates that the person who produced this export output decided to go for one of the record type, and in this particular instance it is project. If I export an item type data, then obviously I will see data here under item types, but null against the project because we are not exporting the project data. I will show that information later on, but right now I just wanted to show that because we have exported project, all its item types data, its items data and requirements breakdown structure is included within this particular block of projects array. And for three different types, which are live project data, which we call it as the current data, which are project, item type, and item requirements breakdown structure data, when you export any one of them, you can see items traceability data for those data that is exported from OpenRose. And similarly, if you export any of the baseline data, then you will see information about baseline item traceability in that particular section. That's the export output that we produced when we export the project. Let me close that. Let's go back to OpenRose and look at our project. Now I'm going to export just a particular item type. So let me get the ID of the item type. Let's go to the export area. If I punch in that ID against the project, as you can see, I'm just putting in the item type ID against the project. It'll obviously fail, saying that the project with this ID is not found, purely because that ID is for the item type. So you have to select that I want to export item type and then pass in the item type information here. And then when you publish the item type data, obviously you have the item type related data exported against the project. You will see null because we are not exporting project, we're exporting an item type. So you'll see that particular item type exported along with all its items, which are nothing but requirements listed in JSON format. Now there are no traceability exported. Instead of saying null, it says an empty array, surely because we do not have in our sample data any traceability of requirements linking within the set of requirements which are exported under the selected item type. So let me close this and let me go over to another item type export. Now I'm going to select the third item type, which is post fundraising activity. Let's pick up the ID of the same. Why I'm doing so is because it has the requirements breakdown structure with several layers of requirements, and I know that some of these requirements does have internal traceability amongst them. So I just wanted to show you that if in the scope of exported requirements, if there are any traceabilities, then you will see those traceability data exported as well. Let's go back to export screen in item types, punch in the ID of the item type that I want to export. Let's export that and let's open this file. Now we are exporting an item type, not the project, but item type called as post fundraising activity. It has got certain data structure here, and we should see also, oh, okay, there are no traceability data found. Perhaps there are no traceability amongst itself. So maybe I was mistaken here. Let me just go and create one traceability for you for the demo purpose. Let's go back to the project and let's say plan video content is a parent. So I will just make that a parent of publish and promote the fundraising activities. So in that case, I will create one more parent trace, and that is pointing to plan video content. And if I go there, obviously it is here within the scope of the data that we want to export. So we just introduced a new trace between plan video content and publish and promote those video content, where plan video content is the parent and publish and promote is a child. So let's go back into our export screen, and one more time let's export the third item type, which is nothing but post fundraising activities. I'm just going to click on export, and this time I'm sure we should see the requirements breakdown structure, but we should also see that one traceability that we just introduced for this demo purpose. So let's go back, look for the ID here. I'm just going back at the top and looking for that ID. That's nothing but plant video content that has been identified as a parent. Let me search again and let's find the item type for this ID. Let's go back up on top at home and then search for the ID, which is nothing but this child requirement, and that's the publish and promote item type. Sorry, I thought this traceability was already there, but obviously my demo data didn't have that traceability, so I had to create that trace to show you that all the traceability data that belongs to the scope of the data that we are exporting is included in the output. Well, that leads us to the third part of the demo, which is nothing but exporting an item. So the third option is export a particular item. In that case, what I'll do is, because there is a link between this requirement and this requirement, I'm just going to pick up this create and publish social media video and reels showcasing fundraising success, because that's the parent, and when I export the parent, it will export the entire requirements breakdown structure, and all the traceability within the scope of those exported data should be included in the output. So let's go ahead and copy that particular ID of a particular requirement or item and then punch in that ID for export purpose. Let's export that. We have the file available. It does not publish the project, it does not publish the item types, but now it publishes items and sub items. And here we have that main item that we decided to export, which also contains plant video content, which starts with B999B as the ID, and then it should also have the publish and promote requirement, which starts with ADDB53, and that should be our traceability, B999B and ADDB53. Exactly the output we were expecting is produced by OpenRose export functionality. Similarly, we should be able to decide upon exporting data for the baseline and baseline item type, as well as baseline traceability data will also be included. So let's go ahead and create the baseline if our project doesn't have any baseline. So let's go open the tree view and look at the baselines. We currently have no baseline data. So let's create a baseline. Let's say export baseline demo. We can describe it with some details about why we're capturing this baseline, and let's create the baseline. Baseline is now created. We can go to the tree view of the baseline. We can see the baseline name and we can expand it. Exactly the 3 different item types with requirement breakdown structure is available there. More videos about baseline is available in our YouTube channel, so please go ahead and look at them if you want to learn more about the snapshotting and baselining capabilities. Let's first export the entire baseline. We have several number of requirements, including requirements breakdown structure. I'm going to export entire baseline, and when I export the baseline, there are some special options that are available. So let's go back and change this screen to make this the export one. I'm just going to change the order of my tabs. So this is where my baseline data is available, and this is why my export screen is. Let's export the entire baseline. And when I export the baseline, there's one more step, which is, should I export everything from the baseline, or should I only export those requirements which are marked for inclusion within the baseline? So we will talk about this inclusion exclusion in few seconds, but right now I'm just going to export everything for the demo purpose. When I export everything, then we have the new file generated in my downloads, and that file is called export of baseline from OpenRose. Let's open that, and you can see in terms of null, there is no data exported from the live project, which is project, item type, item, and item trace. There is nothing exported there. Instead, we are exporting the entire baseline, including item type for the baseline, individual item for the baseline. It's quite a lot of data because it's the entire project, including sub-items. So here you can see baseline sub-items are also included in the output. And then we should expect certain traces. We now have 4 traces. You remember originally we had 3 traces within the project, and we introduced a 4th one that was within the 3rd item type. All that traceability data is exported. Obviously the ID for each one of them is different here because it is nothing but a baseline item ID, not the original item ID. When we create the snapshot or a baseline, we create a completely new record and give that record a new ID for identification purpose. So we should be able to see this output for the baseline like the way we have the output for the entire project. We can export the entire baseline as well. The second thing I wanted to show you is exporting a particular item type. So let's just export post fundraising activity, which is within the baseline here, right? So we are wanting to export this data. So let's go ahead and pick up the ID of that particular item type, which is nothing but a baseline item type. And let's go over to the baseline item type, pass in the ID. It will show us the summary of that record. And then we are exporting that entire set. And here we go. We have the JSON file where we are not exporting a baseline. Instead, we are exporting a baseline item types, and within that we should now be able to see information about that baseline item type and its baseline requirements items breakdown structure. Now within this scope we should only see one traceability because that is the traceability between plan the video and publish the video related items. That's exactly what we see out here. We can also go and find this record. Let's go and find it, and that record is the plan video content. So that's the actual baseline ID, which is based on item ID this. We can also kind of correlate to which item did it created the baseline of and from. Anyhow, let's go ahead and show the final output related to baseline item type, and that is nothing but, let's select again, by the way, I'm within that baseline. You can see I'm in the baseline tree view. I'm within that export baseline demo baseline, and there I'm going to select create and publish social media video related requirement, and that's the baseline requirement, which is what I'm going to use for generating my output. It shows me the summary of the same, and I'm just going to output everything from that particular baseline item. And you can see here we have the output with requirements breakdown structure, which contains sub items as well. You can see this is a sub item of the baseline, one of the sub item, and then we again have the same traceability information, which is nothing but if I search for this particular record in my output, it is for plan video content as expected, and that's actually linking to publish the video content. That's the baseline export. Now there is one additional thing that I wanted to show you, that within the baseline, when you have a baseline, you can decide what should be included in the baseline. So you're doing scoping of your baseline by working with your stakeholders, by working with your team, the marketing, the business owners, the users, and then you decide on which items are you going to include or exclude from the baseline. So for the demo purpose, let's exclude this entire set. So I'm just going to say this entire set under the post fundraising is excluded. So what I'm going to do is first export the item type, which is the parent to it. Let's select that, go to the baseline item type and export that particular record. It found it, and I'm not going to include those items which are excluded, which are marked for exclusion. So what I'm trying to say is when I export this lot, I don't want any of these data to be exported. All this which are having red colored cross or X in front of them, they are not included in the baseline. So I don't want this data to be exported, and I don't want any traceability data related to this to be exported. So in such cases, I'm just exporting my item type with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in it, right? So let's do that. This time when I export, I'm going to say only export baseline item marked for inclusion, and the marked for inclusions are the 6 items. Let's do that export. We now have the new file generated. We should have the item type, and then we should have 6 records. So let's verify that. This is record 1 with no sub items. This is record 2 with no sub items, record 3, record 4, record 5, and record 6, and that's it. Obviously there are no traceability as well, because amongst these 6 records that we have exported, we don't have any traceability between them. So this is how we can export a particular baseline by deciding should we include or exclude items which are really marked for exclusion. What I can also show you here is, let's go back to the same export. I'm going to use the same ID to identify the third baseline item type, and this time I'm not going to restrict to include in the output only the included baseline item. I want to include everything. When I include everything, obviously it will generate the output as that is the complete set of entire breakdown structure, irrespective of whether item is included or excluded. But we can see that information here. You can see is included is true, and if I select that, you will also see items inclusion where is included is false. So you can see we start excluding from the create and publish social media video reels sort of baseline requirement, and that particular record is now included in the output purely because when we decided to export the data, we decided to include all the data. That's why we can see output generated here for all the data, including the traceability or baseline item traceability for those items which are within the scope of our export. So you can decide in terms of baseline, there is one more additional step to choose from, which is should you include those items which are excluded from the baseline or not. With that, I think we have covered quite a lot of ground. We will really appreciate if you can please share this information with others who can take benefit out of this feature that we have introduced. And purpose of allowing exporting of data is multifolded. Today we have just shown the output in JSON format, but it can be consumed by other products, other software, other integration partners, as well as we can feed this information into AI engines where we can then ask more questions to the AI software about our own requirements data. We can help set the context of our communication with the AI platforms. We'll talk about that later in a separate video, but today I just wanted to show you this new feature that we have released in version 0.2032 related to export of all these different types of data from OpenRose. We really look forward for your feedback, and please share it with others who can take benefit as well. Have a good day, and thanks a lot for your time. See you next time. Bye for now.